See how much it's recording.
Stu, you still there? Am I still here? We lost you. Hey guys, can you hear me? Audience, am I in front of you already? Somebody send me a note if you can hear me, if I'm already live. Oh, yes, thanks, Prabha. I'm already live. So I'm guessing Stu is going to come back for a conversation in the coffee shop. Good morning, Donna. Prabha, I'm supposed to hang on until Stu comes back, right? I mean, that's the whole format, I'm guessing. Okay, super. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. I can understand. Technical issues. Ah, there he is.
Shashi. Hello, everybody. I missed you. Sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I hit go live and boom, it just dropped me out. It was kind of like, wow, thank you so much. All right. So welcome. Thank you for bearing with us, everybody. Would you mind introducing yourself, Shashi, and just in case you didn't cover it before, say who you are, and I'll just invite a couple of people to join us.
No, I was waiting for you to come, Stu, and made sure that I don't steal your thunder.
I missed you, buddy. I missed you. I'm not sure what happened there.
So, thanks for having me here, buddy. Thank you so much.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, let's regroup. I mean, this is our Founder Friday, and we have one of these every month to meet really cool people and hear their stories and find out what makes them tick. And it's a big privilege to have you here today, Shashi. Thank you for making the time. So why don't you start by just introducing yourself and what Jperstada all about, and we'll see who joins us to ask you some questions.
Okay, thanks for having me here, Stu. I think what you guys are doing is amazing because you and I are pretty much on the same boat, building the community, and it's not easy building a community, especially a community that is set up to create some impact and show some value. Is very difficult. I mean, if it was just a community that catches up once in a while, has a cup of coffee or a beer, it's easy. So I'm with you. I understand what you do and what all you guys do, and thank you so much for doing what you guys do and having me here. Really appreciate that a lot.
Happy days. So, Shashi, you're originally from where? From Bangalore?
So as you know, my name is Shashi. I grew up in this southern Indian town called Bangalore in India.
You call it a town? You call it a town?
Growing up, it was a town. It was a small town. Now it's a big city. That's a different story. But I'm still a small town guy deep inside, and I still remember my city being the way it used to be back in the days. So for me, it still somehow has that small town feeling, right? So
does the real estate there cost as much as Silicon Valley now?
Some places, yeah. In some places, maybe sometimes even more. But definitely more than
some very
Berlin.
New York style apartments being built when I was there last time as well. Some big stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. mean, the cost is definitely more than Berlin, that much I can say, where I live right now. So I'm coming to life from Berlin. So yeah, I mean, come from a middle class family, lived paycheck to paycheck, come from the 80s. My dad used to work in a factory. I'm sure a lot of people from the 80s sort of connect with that. And we had no exposure to anything called as business, right? So the thing that my family used to always teach me and sort of connects to a saying that we always had was never stretch your legs beyond the length of your mattress. I'm sort of translating that to you in English, so which meant live within your means. Right? So dreaming about being an entrepreneur, going out and doing the things that you dreamt of doing was a concept that never existed for where I come from. Uh, so while growing up, I had no idea that I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So here I am, co-founder of Draper Startup House for Europe and India. Um, Jperstada House is essentially, for me, a platform to help people realize their dreams, make people become entrepreneurs, help them, get access to capital, give them all the skills and education and connection that helps them to get to that place. And for me, it's a very personal thing. And of all the things that I've done in my life, I chose to sort of put my time into something like this at this stage of my life, because I get a lot of satisfaction doing this. So we are a co-living space that sort of, combines with a micro campus for entrepreneurship. We operate in about 10 different countries all around the world. Part of the Draper Venture Network now, sort of funded by Tim Draper himself, the legendary Silicon Valley entrepreneur who saw some value in what we're doing, and he said, something that he wants to associate himself with. So we are in Lisbon, in Tallinn, in Europe, and in 8 other places all around the world. And um, that's the Jipper Startup House story.
Hey,
So
Stu, can I
you
ask a
got
question?
hospitals. Yeah, go for it, John. Go for it.
Good morning. Should we think of you as an incubator or as value creation or sort of a combination of the two?
That's a good question. We sort of call ourselves as the third expression, right? The first expression is your accelerator and incubator, which is basically built on the design of exclusion. Means you have to get in, you have to get qualified, you have to have the right kind of ideas to be able to access the community, access the energy and education. Then from there on, as the industry progressed and as the ecosystem matured, you had the concept of co-working spaces, which essentially was an open community space where you could get in. Co-working spaces were predominantly built for startups to, sort of facilitate peer-to-peer education. It's a different matter where the co-working space stands today, because now it's sort of more towards optimization and real estate plays, and planning towards established companies and retention for employees and culture and many other things. So the model has evolved and changed for the co-working. So what we do is a third expression, which is basically a combination of the two, but with an open door policy. That means you can walk in and walk out at any point in time, at any stage of your life, whether you have an idea, don't have an idea, whether you have a business or you don't have a business, whether you want to scale a business, whether you want to raise money. You always have a community in the cities that we operate in. And we aim to be in at least 50 cities around the world. Right now we are in 10. Thanks to COVID, our sort of growth has been slowed down. So this is the sort of experience of the space. This is the nature of the space and how people can interface with it. I hope I answered your question.
Great, thanks.
So how's business right now?
It's tough. Business is tough. These are the kind of times when everything gets questioned, everybody gets questioned, every decision gets questioned, everything every day gets questioned. So business is slowly inching towards some positive space, but we have a long way to go. Because we are a real estate space, there's a lot of bleed, there's a lot of pressure to keep the infrastructure alive. It's an interesting phase. Like everybody else, we are trying to figure out what to do as well. So it's been almost 7 months since we've been trying to sort of, manage this, and it's deep times, expensive times, and it's also time to be really honest.
Mm. And do you see any difference between Lisbon, Berlin, Bangalore, the other things going on in Asia? Is it all the same, or are there different trends happening in different places?
So different places have different trends, because different cities have different purposes, right? So if you look at a city like Lisbon, predominantly a destination city for a lot of people within Northern African markets or Southern European markets, travel is travel and fresh blood and people coming in and going out is a big business, the main business revenue stream for us. Now that's been cut out because a lot of people are not traveling. We saw some 1.5 months of travel coming into Lisbon, but beyond that, it's sort of trickling and it's sort of slowly stopping. And the other space for us in Europe, which is Tallinn, is a strong innovation entrepreneurship sort of an economy where a lot of people go there to build startups and get in touch with the community. So there we see some mixed trends, and then if you go to Asia, you have places like Singapore, which is heavily quarantined and heavily controlled in terms of trade, business, blah blah blah. You're not getting much of business there, and we are facing some serious situations. Bali is another space. For an example, is a place where people are typically a lot of travelers come there, a lot of nomads come there, and a lot of people are usually in the frame of mind of figuring their life out. So that's a great place for us to talk to a lot of people and turn them entrepreneurs. So that is sort of suffering in its own way. So every space and every city that we operate in the world has different energies and different purposes, but collectively they all are sort of going through some challenges. Some spaces
Mm.
like Bangalore has been seeing some sort of business coming in. Manila is seeing some traction, and Lisbon is seeing some traction, but it's very hard to sort of predict if these are for long term or if that's just a blip in the radar.
Well, I don't know about you, Pedro. Thanks for joining us, but I fancy the idea of being in lockdown in Bali. It just conceptually seems to work for me. I don't know if the reality would be right. What do you think, Pedro? You got any questions for Shashi?
First of all, thank you, and sorry for these inconvenient problems with my connections. And are you listening to me, Sashi?
Yeah,
I
perfect.
can hear
Yeah.
you, but
Well, being in Bali could work for me also. Let's try it. Let's see. For Sasha, just one question is: do you see any pattern, any change in the type of entrepreneurship or the skills required or the skills that are actually working better for the entrepreneur in these great challenging times at this area that we are living in? Was that any change, any impact that you can see now? It's just 6 months, I know.
this is by personal point of view, right? So I think we have sort of stretched the Silicon Valley way of building startups from the last 10 years a little too far. I guess now, thanks to technology, thanks to the trend, thanks to COVID, there's going to be, I feel, a huge disruption in the way businesses are going to get built. There is going to be a lot of decoupling. What we used to call as the core of a business is now going to be questioned. I feel there's going to be a lot of decoupling of businesses, and there will be a huge opportunity for a lot of new players to come in and help you take different functions of your businesses and turn them into a business. So you, as an innovator or an entrepreneur, don't have to go out and worry about managing people, managing operations, managing payrolls, managing marketing, sales, yada yada yada. But you, as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, you can only focus on your innovation and focus on your idea. I see that could become a trend going forward in how people will sort of build businesses. I feel that distributed workforces, not having to stay in one city to be able to do a startup is going to add to this. I feel, and I see more and more collaborative tools and more online sort of a workspace like environment, becoming the future, the new norm. That's just my kind of thing.
Just right, sorry for being so rude and do not having said good morning or good afternoon, everyone, especially to my co-hosts Steve, Stuart, and John. Sorry, I was here suffering from these problems with my connections. It was very rude of me. Sorry.
No problem. So you have Shashi, you have a Portuguese, an American, and an English perspective.
Yeah.
But technically, John is half Portuguese, half American, and half English because he comes from Lexington. So he must have some English DNA in him somewhere from that. John, what do you think about the Jperstada house approach? Do you think it works?
Well, of course, Draper Fisher Jurvetson is a longtime key player in Silicon Valley as an investment community, and Jim Draper was really key in the early years of that. So there's a lot of heritage behind the concept of doing this. But I'd like to ask this question: of the 10 cities that you're in, which sectors of startup activity in which cities are perhaps easier or harder to raise funding in this strange, surreal environment? I mean, to raise funding for the startups.
Yeah, of course. I think overall every city is really seeing some challenges because we also run a venture syndicate program in all of these cities, in all of these 10 cities. So essentially our job there is to identify good ideas, build some local investors who sort of seize the trend, support these entrepreneurs, and get some traction, and then put them onto the larger global pipeline, which could have access to Series A, Series B, and so on and so forth through the Draper network, right? To the Draper Venture Network. That's the sort of model with which we have built the venture product. We have been pushing for the last 3.5 months. We have seen, I think, on an average, more than 60 odd ideas and startups, which have, which out of which at least about 4 or 5 would have gotten funded if not for COVID. Because they had all the credentials to get funded, but now the decision making is getting extended. We are seeing more and more companies that have seen some product market fit or has some strong digital play finding some investments, but that has not been necessarily from our ecosystem, which is not our Draper ecosystem. But overall, it's been a difficult thing to be able to raise capital. But having said that, numbers also say that there has not been that much of a decline in terms of the number of checks that have been cut in the last 3 or 4 months. And I also feel mostly because those are contributed by companies that have big ticket sort of funding sizes than the small ones which you would have seen otherwise. So short answer, or rather the summarization of the answer to the question is, it's been difficult overall. I wish I could sort of give you a specific answer to say this is the trend that I'm seeing.
Okay, well, thank you. And Pedro, I should have responded to what you said. I don't know whether you know it or not, but our friend Sean spent most of COVID in Bali. He just returned to Europe 2 or 3 days ago.
I'm jealous. Thank you, John. I'm so jealous.
Yeah. You see, the reality could be different. But
you want to enjoy Bali, right? You're still at your home because Bali is quarantined too. You have the same countries that you got to see every day.
Okay.
I mean, who knows what the reality is like on the ground? But my brain just says that Sean's been sat there by a pool drinking coconut milk. I don't know why. It just probably it's the pictures. I don't know. So Shashi, tell me what prepared you for the Draper journey? What did you do before all of this?
This is my fourth startup. I have my entrepreneurship journey started by pure accident. I love this quote which always says that I could look at the horizon because I stood on the shoulders of the giants. So I had the good fortune of standing on the shoulders of the giants to be able to see. And then a lot of that training has got me to here. I've done a startup in the education space. My journey started in 1999 as an entrepreneur. We worked a lot in privatization of professional education in India. So we were in the back end doing a lot of work there, and I spent about 4.5 years doing that. From there on, I moved on to work in the development space. I used to run an office called as the Indus Entrepreneurs, which is a global network of entrepreneurs, over 60 odd countries. It's pretty much does a lot of ecosystem development work. So I had the good fortune at that time in 2007 to 2013, which was when the India's biggest sort of entrepreneurship push happened. So I had the good fortune of working with a lot of policymakers and entrepreneurs at that time to set the ground for the entrepreneurial activities that you see in the city today or in the country today. So that took about 4.5 years, and I got a lot of learning on public policy, on macro thinking, on systems thinking, and how do you design things to, especially in a country like India, teaches you a lot about how do you design programs that impacts the masses. From there on, I sort of got a little disillusioned. I became a farmer for 4 years. I set up an organic farm, a zero pesticide organic farm, which did farm to shelf, fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, close to my city, about 100 kilometers away from my city. I had a lot of fun. I've never grown a blade of grass before in our lives. So, learning how to grow vegetables and fruits and all of these things was an amazing journey for me. So I spent about 4.5 years doing that. While doing this, I sort of, got onto the journey of starting the Jperstada house, which is now what's the Jperstada house, because I realized during that part that it's just the entrepreneurship that has gotten me to where I am in life today and given me so much experiences and opportunity to sit and talk to you guys and learn from a lot of people like you. So it sort of became a subconscious, a subconscious purpose to try and help as many people become entrepreneurs. Try and see how much we can make sure that an idea that has found its passion and time doesn't die without getting the right kind of support and the right kind of help. So that led me into this journey, and I have been in this since 2015 now. And Jperstada House, wake up every day in the morning, try to make it a good day, and try to help someone and inspire someone and make sure that somebody, anybody, whatever, whoever walks in through the door with an idea gets some amount of help and support to get to the next level. So that's been my journey of sticking to Jperstada House all of this time.
You spanned 20 years very quickly there, Shashi. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. We've been joined by Prabha. I think she's come to ask you some questions. Prabha, what have you got for Shashi today?
Hi, Shashi. How's it going? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
It was one of the questions I was definitely going to ask, and thanks for filling that gap. Was where you came from and why you came to this, which is awesome to hear, because I think a lot of the Canopy can relate to this kind of motivation. I think I have a couple of questions. One is, this idea that there are quite a few startup communities out there these days. And I guess, it reflects the differences in cultures that you have, not just geographically, but also just within startups and people, right? But what is Draper's kind of differentiation in all of this? How do you guys see yourselves, and do you have a sweet spot that comes to you, or the other way around? What's your target?
So, as I said, right, so we have a sort of expression of the third kind, which is basically trying to see how we can get people to spend a night with us, bond with each other, and turn that into an inspirational experience of going out and becoming entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a small example. When you were a kid, you would have sleepovers, right? With your friends. And that would probably be the best time of your life. You would have watched a lot of, read a lot of stories, did a lot of stuff, played a lot of games, watched a lot of movies, depending on the age you are in. So sleepovers are so special as for everybody. I mean, I don't know if you guys do it now. Even now, I do sleepovers at my friend's place. You wake up in the morning, it's a fresh morning, you share breakfast and whatnot. There's a lot of bonding that get built by spending a night at a friend's place or study. That you're coming to the options. Your options are you go to an Airbnb, you can go to a hotel, you can go to a backpacker's hostel, you can go to a co-living space. But you can also come to somebody like, say, Jperstada House, who curates your audience, who talks your language, who helps you recharge your batteries as an entrepreneur. And maybe through that experiences, you might end up getting funded, you might learn something new, you might find your co-founder, you might expand your business, you might find a customer or your CEO, which has happened all the time in our spaces. So it's that experience, right? It's that experience once you touch it, when you feel it, then you realize the importance of a community like that, or a space like that to have in a city. So that's probably what our differentiator is, and that's what our experience is.
So by virtue of choosing the sleepover, this is kind of something that defines your community. People who are bold enough to choose that, and people who are seeking that kind of environment, I guess. Is that a
platform? We're just a platform, and our job is to inspire people, and then along the way add a few more values, which is helping them raise money, helping them learn, and helping businesses launch. So we are a platform that way to help you inspire you, to help you in your journey.
So can I ask a follow-up question, Stu?
Yeah.
Which was the second one, which is
of course,
what's the future? What's the future for Jperstada House in Lisbon, globally? I know it's a difficult question to answer, particularly this time, but do you have any ideas, any guesses right now?
I think I'll just tell you what our dreams are. I mean, I factually, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Our dreams are to be in 50 cities all around the world, able to enable 1 million entrepreneurs in some sense or the other on their journey of becoming an entrepreneur. That's been our dream, and we are still working towards it, and we're still hoping that we're going to get there, and it's going to take longer than before, but eventually we will get there.
Awesome. Thanks, Shashi. It's really cool. And good luck.
Thanks, Baba.
Wish you all the best.
What are you on our Shashi, John? Got any follow-ups to that?
Yeah, when I was in Silicon Valley, I got to know the industry entrepreneur, Ty, very well. I always think of calling them Ty. I never really, use that full name. And PK is the guy that I got to know the best when he was in the management team there. How important has Ty been to you in your worldwide both fundraising and coaching efforts? I'd encourage you to describe a little bit more about what Ty is, because probably most of the people don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think Ty, is one of the earliest organized entrepreneurial communities that we all ever got to see, according to me, at that scale. Right? So the story is pretty interesting. So it was Vinod Khosla, who was the founder of Sun Microsystems, and it was Kanwal Reiki, it was a couple of other guys who were transiting in Frankfurt. And they all met up in the lounge, and they were sort of first generation entrepreneurs from India, from Asian continent, who have gone there and made it really big. And this was also around the time when you had the outsourcing back office sort of movement on the rise. So they realized that there's a lot of talent sitting in Asia which doesn't have access to the kind of knowledge and opportunities that you can see in the US. And I think this was just after the book "The World Is Flat," somewhere around that time. So they said we need to sort of create a platform for people to connect with each other and make sure that we sort of build a bridge between the Silicon Valley and the Asian continent. So they went out and started this, sort of a meetup group, if you may call it, as the Indus entrepreneurs that started off in, I think, Vinod Khosla's house, if you're not wrong, or in the garage. And it's sort of because of the diaspora community that was so strong in India and in Asia, and a lot of people were coming back. There was a lot of reverse migration that was happening back into Asia as well, because a lot of opportunities were coming out of there too, entrepreneurial. So this movement led and took off and became what we call as the Indus Entrepreneurs right now, which is basically a not-for-profit organization funded purely by the entrepreneurs for the entrepreneurs globally to help them become entrepreneurs and find access to each other. And right now, there's a lot of the things that I used to do before could be sort of questioned in terms of value, a few of them, because a lot more alternate communities have come up and you have online opportunities for people to connect. And you have to understand that the kind of support that we get as entrepreneurs today from the entire ecosystem is very different from the way it used to be back in the days. Today you've got Google giving out credits, Amazon giving out credits, people giving you incubation, giving you grants, giving you scholarships, paying your rents, paying everything. Right? Any support you need as an entrepreneur in the ecosystem today globally, you can find access to it. But back in the days, that was not the case. So organizations like these, communities, people coming together, helping each other, bringing those ideas into the world was the way it was done. So that, according to me, is what the core of the Indus Entrepreneurs is, the value that they added to the ecosystem. And what has it added? It has added a lot of value to me in my life personally, and the concept of community, the concept of value, and giving back and mentoring, and all of these things are the things that I sort of learned from there. And I sort of try to bring that into my work every day, and help people. That's the contribution of Thai into my life and the work that I do.
Great, thank you.
Shashi, I have a personal question, because you're one of the few people that can answer this kind of question for me, which is, given that you've been in both Lisbon and Bangalore ecosystems, what do you think they can learn from each other? Because they're very different, but they also have a lot of similarities. What can they learn? What can they positively build from each other?
I can. My experiences, and I've got in comparison to Lisbon, I've got more experience out of Bangalore, but I've sort of picked up some trends and understand. So please forgive me if I'm
Don't worry, Pedro will put you straight if you get a little bit wrong on the Lisbon one. Don't worry.
I think Lisbon's community needs to probably take a lot more pride in the work that they do. And there's a lot of expectation for the government to go out and do things, and then there are a few people going out and doing this, if it is their business model, so to say, to go out and develop in the community. But I think the founders, the entrepreneurs, and the diasporic community who have become entrepreneurs elsewhere in the world, who come from Portuguese descent, probably now need to sort of unite and give back and sort of create that sense of support through funding, mentoring, and all of these things in the Portuguese ecosystem for the Portuguese entrepreneurs to come out and try things out. It's also the fact that the Portuguese ecosystem will probably be highly dependent on people coming in, talent moving in from different parts of the world. So it's also a great opportunity for a lot of these Portuguese investors to tap into the talent and opportunity in their homeland, because they have the understanding of the ecosystem and the community, and benefit for themselves and the overall community as well. So I think if there was one thing that the Portuguese ecosystem can learn, could be is to how to sort of leverage the current situation, and be a lot more proud of the heritage and value.
And in reverse, what do you think Bangalore can learn from Lisbon?
I think Bangalore probably has very little to learn from Lisbon, because Bangalore has sort of become a cautionary tale in terms of how they screwed it up. So they can't go back in time and fix it. Let me see, what is it that one thing that they could learn?
Hey, Shashi, sorry, how did they screw it up? I'm not aware. Is it obvious to everyone else? Maybe it is.
No, it's just the quality of life. It's if you're in a society that allows you, or rather, which depends on you thinking and being creative, you need to have an environment that needs to be conducive for thinkers and creative people to be productive. The current political system, the standard of living, and these things contributed with many other things. Right now, COVID has sort of made it very difficult for a lot of creators and innovators to come up and think. So these are not immediately. These are the kind of effects that you see sort of pan out in decades. These are not things that you see today, right? You cannot. These are things that you will start seeing its effect showing up after 10 years and 15 years. The reason why Bangalore's ecosystem is so great today and has about 14, 15 unicorns sitting out of there is mostly because of all the work that has gone in the last 15 years to 20 years, and that's the result that we're seeing today. So what we're doing wrong today is going to be the result that you'll see after 20 years or 15 years, maybe even sooner now.
So if you're have you thought of something that Bangalore could learn from Lisbon? Because if not, I have a follow-up question. Go on.
I can see Pedro's jumping at the bit there as well. So
no.
I think for a lack of better example, I would say some of this policy making and sort of dynamism that the government of Portugal has in attracting investments and entrepreneurs and stuff like that could be something that the government can learn. I don't know, honestly. I don't have a really straightforward answer to that question.
Yeah, did Pedro want to jump in, or go on, Stu. Who was chomping at the bit? I didn't hear you.
Come on, Pedro, bring a Portuguese perspective to this one. What do you think about what Shashi said?
You're on mute. There you go.
Weird. I'm sure there's something that probably Portugal, Lisbon ecosystem could be of use for Bangalore's, but I'll be humble enough to let Shashi to follow Sashi's suggestion. See, well, you started previously and you are stronger, so let's be humble and learn from your peers. I do not exactly agree with everything you said, but I think you gave us nice tips, and we should all reflect on them, other than fight with arguments and give another perspective. Let's reflect on that and learn from it. I have a question for Shashi, which is you are a long-term entrepreneur and an related person, okay? So what do you see today as the main skills of a successful entrepreneur for the future? Because you said something very interesting. You said you're going to see them in 15 years. And that's a very interesting perspective. So looking at the current entrepreneurial people, what do you think are the main skills that will benefit in the future that they should have today? How do you foresee that?
I sort of, there are a lot of keywords that jump in my head. But this again is my point of view. I think the one thing that sort of all of those keywords boils down to one single word, at least for me, is consciousness. Being conscious about what they're creating, what value they're creating, where they're putting their capital, how they're treating their people. And I think the next important word to me after being conscious is about being empathetical, having empathy towards your customers, your people, the product, the culture, everything that you're creating. I think these are the two things that, according to me, are very important for becoming a successful, not only an entrepreneur, but anybody as an individual, as a leader, or as a human being, or whichever sphere that you want to go into. But more so needed in entrepreneurship is because it's going to be a very hard life. It's going to be a very hard journey. It's a journey that it questions your, questions your very existence every single day. And every single waking minute of your life, when you go to work, when you're not going to work, when you're trying to sleep. So I think being clear of your, conscience and having having conscious about what you're conscious and conscious about what you're doing and what you're creating is, I think, very important.
Okay, thank you.
Prabha, what do you want to jump in with?
Yeah, I've got questions on a couple of dimensions now, but can I take you briefly back to your experience with different geographies, Shashi, because a bit like Stu's kind of touching down in Bangalore, out of your sort of collection, Singapore has meaning for me because I was born in Singapore and we still have family there, and and friends, and we've seen it sort of grow and mature. Um, what For me, I think I see a lot of similarities between Portugal and Singapore in terms of economic opportunity and sort of a country that's trying to and has capabilities to punch above its weight, right, in terms of population versus population position, if you like, and a little bit because of its sort of position, a bit like Singapore is a stopping point for Asia. Portugal is a great place to stop for Europe if you're coming across from the US. These kinds of things, and the weather, of course. What I would love to know, what we could learn here in Portugal now from what's happening in Singapore, and maybe you're also trying to bring some of that across with your own business with Draper.
So this is not my it's not coming out of my experiential knowledge, but this is more coming out of my sort of intellectual knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I think the scenarios are very different.
Okay.
Singapore took off when we were as a world trying to create a global supply chain of sorts, right? It's a hardcore trading sort of an island economy, and a lot of it was dependent on trade, and from there on, a lot of things were built on top of it. And today you have the financial market sitting out of there, and then sort of blend back to the rest of the Asian markets. So with us sort of heading into the direction of becoming self-sustaining in our supply chain and logistics and consumption and all of that stuff going forward, trying to sort of compare a Singaporean growth story to a Portuguese growth story might not necessarily work because we are more of going to be in a digital economy, and which is something that gives access to everybody and anybody in the world to create what Thailand is creating or what Barbados is creating. Everybody is creating the same thing.
Right.
There's going to be more competition there, and then then you add on top of it your cryptocurrency movement and Bitcoin and all of that kind of stuff. The kind of financial infrastructure that Singapore has, which was important back in the days, may not be relevant anymore going forward. Mm-hmm. So, in my mind, from my point of view, that model might not necessarily help coaches.
And in terms of the startup scene that you're seeing, experiencing both sides, I guess that was more my question in terms of, I understand Singapore is way ahead, and Portugal will have to draw on sort of influences that are parallel 20 years after, right? Or sort of a generation after, but what's happening in this sort of startup scene, startup communities, entrepreneurs, founders. I loved Pedro's question because I think now bringing it to that personal level, especially since you are, I think in this Founder Friday series, we like to hear about your own experience as a founder, and you're like a founder bringing founders together. So we're sort of spending a lot of time on your business, but then I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal experience too. So you can take either end of that question, either the the Singapore community end or the your own personal experience.
I love the Portuguese ecosystem. Honestly, I love the Portuguese people. I think total addressable market for Portugal is a lot more than what Singapore has. If you look at it's part of the European Union, so the size of the market itself is quite high. Strategically located geographically, which has access to the Southern European market and as well as the Northern African markets. Mm-hmm. It's got the strength of the language Portuguese, which is spoken in a lot of African markets as well as in Brazilian markets and in many other places in Asia as well. Mm-hmm. From that point of view, and now adding technology on top of it and internet on top of it, I feel Portuguese, sort of ecosystem has tremendous opportunity. Mm-hmm. And 300 days of sun in Europe, right? So that's just amazing. And a lot of good talent locally available as well, and as well as people now moving in to live in Lisbon, which is, I think, in the next 5 years or so, Lisbon's going to become such an important city in the European continent. And the best talent, probably, you will find all of them going and living in places in Portugal or places like in Lisbon. So from all of those put together, I think Portuguese already has and is going to have a lot more advantage, and a better advantage, and a lot better story sort of to tell in comparison to Singapore. Singapore's, I feel, culturally an insulated economy, an insulated culture, but they get things done. It's very, very efficient. And I think efficiency is the key there. But I think for entrepreneurship to thrive, you need creativity. And when you're putting people in an efficient point of view, creativity may not be the thing that comes out of that as a byproduct.
Mm-hmm.
If you put people in a creative environment, beautiful sun for 300 days, and the lifestyle and all of these things, and great talent coming together on top of it, could create this beautiful paradise for people who are thinking and creating to come there and thrive. That's my point of view.
Awesome. Thank you for that positivity.
See, I think you're all missing something really important, right? Which is the reflection in each ecosystem of the importance of cake. Okay, and until you can compare each ecosystem by its adoration of cake, there's no hope for you. Okay, so obviously the Portuguese ecosystem has an epicenter around the nata, and other things include some of my favorites, the cake de manteiga. Bangalore has a very strong culture around catering and cake. This is very big. Singapore, not so much cake. Okay, Boston, amazing for cake, absolutely amazing. Silicon Valley, John, what's the Silicon Valley barometer on cake? Where does it feature?
Well, Silicon Valley is really a series of microcultures. For example, San Francisco is not part of Silicon Valley. And if you tell somebody from San Francisco that they're part of Silicon Valley, they'll wonder why you don't know what you're talking about. So there's fantastic pastelerias in San Francisco, which is different from what you'll see if you go down the peninsula to, say, Menlo Park or Palo Alto. And then if you get to San Jose, that's different. And then if you go south of that to Los Gatos, which is, one of my favorite places, that's different as well. I'd like to say I really thought what Shashi said about the difference between different cities is very interesting. I would like to sort of add to that and give him something to think about, and then I've got to leave because I have somewhere else I have to be. But I think it's always difficult to compare ecosystems in different cities. So, for example, I wouldn't want to compare Silicon Valley to Toledo, Ohio, because they're so massively different. And I wouldn't really want to try to compare Boston to Austin to Silicon Valley, because each has its own strengths and weaknesses, as does every other ecosystem in the world. So I think if you want to look for a particular strength that your ecosystem needs to learn about, you need to figure out where the best ones are. So, for example, you can do things in biotech in Austria, which you can't do in Silicon Valley, because the federal laws are different about what you can do with biotech. And if you're interested in fintech, then you might want to look at London and New York. And if you wanted to look at hydroponics, you might want to look at Amsterdam to think about it. So I think each one of these ecosystems has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, and that doesn't mean one is better or worse than the other. It just means they're different, and you need to understand how that relates to what you're trying to do. So, Shashi, I'd like to ask you for your thoughts on that. And while you're talking, I'm afraid I'll have to go away. Thank you for...
No,
Well, miss you, John, but thanks for being here.
Did I cut you off, Stu?
Yeah, go for it, Shashi. Go.
No, I completely second your thoughts. I think that's the way to look at the world going forward and ecosystems going forward. I think we also have developed this culture of celebrating one form of entrepreneurship and creating them as the sort of lighthouse for every sort of entrepreneurship to talk about, which is just ridiculous, right? And it's not just about entrepreneurship based on disruption and technology innovation. There's a lot of things, as you talked about, in food, in agriculture, in in logistics. There's so many different cities that have done so much work and has so much knowledge in all of these places. And I think now these microcosms of different kinds of ecosystems and expertise will have to start coming up, and then we have to start positioning them and marketing them like that as well. So I completely second your thoughts on it.
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry I need to leave.
Thanks for the time.
So,
Thanks, John. See you later. Thanks for being here. Pedro, have you got a follow-up?
Following what John's question and Sashi's answer, how do you see that integrated in your own strategy? Since you want to be global, 50 cities, you recognize different specifics for each country or city or ecosystem or community or whatever, and you could use this, like, for example, helping the entrepreneurs that you are supporting throughout your platform to see that, well, you're in this ecosystem, but we can offer you a way to move to the other one, whatever. Do you see that as an axis on your future strategy to acknowledge that and help benefit that?
Absolutely, because that is one of the key things in our DNA, which is how do we go into an ecosystem, harvest what that ecosystem, that local community is good at, and support communities to develop based on that, and then provide a platform to market and talk about that strength of the city, right? That's very key to our DNA and our strategy. A lot of our so there are two reasons, there are two ways we look at going into a new city. One is we go to an established ecosystem to consolidate of some sorts, or go to an up-and-coming ecosystem to help build it. So there are different playbooks for different stages of maturity of these cities in the ecosystem growth. And oftentimes when we're going into cities that are up and coming, we would love to sort of understand the DNA of the city, bring that out in our communication, bring that out in our strategy, and make that the key thing that we will talk about in all our marketing and communication and collaterals in all of these different places. So, yes, that definitely is a strategy.
Yeah.
All right, so Prabha, I think we've got time for one more question from you, and then Shashi, I'd ask you to close after Prabha's question with your best advice for any early stage entrepreneur that's watching this today. So, Prabha, the honor of the final question.
Wow. Well, I kind of wanted to go in the direction of, your sort of founder, your experience as a founder building this business. I don't know, one of the things that I was wondering was, for example, when you've had your tough moments, and challenges, struggles, who do you go to for who's your trusted voice in tough times? I'm always interested in that kind of insight from founders. Do you go to your own community?
Great question, Prabha. Great question.
The first person that I turn to is my wife.
Okay.
She's because it's very difficult as you progress in this journey of an entrepreneur or a founder. This is my personal point of view, not necessarily applies to everybody. Is you got to cut out noise, right? Because there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of noise that keeps pushing you in lots of different directions. And there's nothing better than the people closest to you who can hold up a mirror and say, "This is who you are." And especially if you have a spouse who has the courage to do that, that's where you should probably lean on towards getting the best advice from, or at least pull a mirror in front of me, right, and tell me where I'm screwing things up. Am I right in this perspective or not? Am I right in this point of view of mine or not? And she knows my weaknesses the most. She knows me in and out. She knows all my issues. So she'll be able to give me exactly saying that, you probably are screwing this up because of this point of view of yours or this weakness of yours. So I turn to my wife a lot. And as cocky as I might sound, a lot of my thoughts and ideas mostly come out of my personal experiences and my way of looking at the world. And validating that is usually by doing it than by getting sort of inputs and advice from people. I validate by doing them, and I see if it works or not. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, moving on, right? Community is very, very important, I think. Sort of cosmic connection that you have, all these people are together going through the same, understand the same problem and speak the same sort of language. In course, even with the community, right? I mean, you might have 500 people as a part of your community, but it's just become one or two people who you really can connect with and resonate with in terms of your thinking and their thinking. And as an entrepreneur and as a founder, you keep on upgrading your point of views and skills with experiences day after day after day. So you're evolving every single day. So the same argument that you had yesterday won't hold true for tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, if you have a partner like that, cherish it, nurture it, and sort of harvest it as much as you can. If not, try to find a partner who can do that.
Awesome. An awesome answer. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, so Shashi, can you close us out with your best advice?
No, don't put me in the spot, Stu. Don't put me in the spot. Go ahead and do it. I hate that kind of stuff.
Come on, imagine, our biggest demographic in Canopy is people who are starting for the first time. And imagine, here we are, sat here watching this. We've never built a startup before. We're just starting to float the boat into those choppy waters. What's Shashi's top tip for us? Other than register at Jperstada House and come and stay in the hostel, which I'm sure we'll focus on.
Stay at the Jperstada House, spend time with me, I'll tell you all this. But nevertheless, one in Lisbon. If you're sitting in Portugal, you should spend some weekends at that place. We've got an amazing team sitting out there who can help you too. That's a bit of my plug. I think one thing that I would say is self-reliance is the only thing that I would request every entrepreneur or a founder to understand the concept of self-reliance and build that into your thinking and operating system as you go along as a founder. What I mean by it, it's just not a word. It's very important because at the end of the day, you need to understand that it is you as a founder who has to decide, make decisions. It is your point of view. It is your vision at play. No matter how much inputs, no matter what noise, no matter whatever comes, at the end of the day, it is you who has to sit at the end of the day, reflect on your thoughts and make that decision. As scary as it might sound, but trust me, the sooner you learn, the better it is for your journey as an entrepreneur. You are alone and you have to make the decision. Do not ever depend on anything else, anybody else to make the decision for you on the journey that you want to take. You'll have founders, advisors, team members, coaches, all of these things in the journey. But the buck stops at you and you will start to feel it. And when you're not prepared to handle that realization, you will sort of, suffer and struggle along the way, and it might sort of slow down the path of your success or other, the places that where you want to go. So that's all I can say.
I think that's brilliant, Shashi. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to have you here, and thank you, Prabha and Pedro, for joining in as well, and for John, who's been here along the way. And we look forward to seeing the next Founder Friday in a month's time. And Shashi, all of this stuff we do here on Founder Friday, it's about seeing what makes people tick who are entrepreneurs. I want to thank you for sharing openly with us and exposing some of that about yourself to other people today. And I hope people watching this get a bit of inspiration from what you said today. Thank you very much. So a great big one of these. Thanks, to everybody. And wish you all a bon fin de semana.
Love you all. Bye.
Thanks, Shashi. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.